Good evening. I hereby call the Palm Springs regular City Council meeting of September 12th, 2024 to order. We'll start with our pledge, and I'll give a little introduction. Dr. Terry Cutover, working with Police Chief Andy Mills, has brought the international program Do the Right Thing to the Palm Springs area. Each month, the program recognizes youth in our community who set an example. Students are recognized in this program, lead the Pledge of Allegiance at our City Council meetings. Today, we welcome Josiah Villa, an 8th grader at Raymond Cree Middle School. Josiah always does the right thing. He actively participates in the school band and readily assists his peers. His conduct consistently reflects punctuality, courtesy, kindness, and helpfulness, contributing to a positive learning environment. Furthermore, his diligent academic performance over the past 3 years at Raymond Cree is commendable. Notably, last year, he showed his dedication by shaving his teachers' names into his hair. He's hopeful to be part of the USB and ASB. Josiah, would you like to lead us in the pledge, please?
And join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which he stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, please conduct a roll call.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Okay. We have no presentations or proclamations. Our next item is acceptance of the agenda. The City Council will discuss the order of the agenda, may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, or request consent calendar items be removed for a separate discussion. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Are there any items staff or council member would like removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and or vote? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a comment on R.
Yes. I also want to mention we are going to continue the public hearing, item 2B, to a date certain of October 10th, as we have gotten a significant amount of information in today that staff needs time to review. So if anybody's waiting for public comment, we are going to postpone that until October 10th. Okay, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to also make a comment on item 1AA. Thank you.
Oh, I have that one too. Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Can we do it on here?
Oh.
Okay, at this time, I invite City Attorney Jeff Ballinger to provide a report on the closed session.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the public, the City Council met in closed session this afternoon to discuss the items that are listed on the agenda. There is no reportable action. And if I could, just for the public's benefit, that public hearing item that was being continued, that's the Oswett Prescott Preserve. And so if any members of the public are here for that, there won't be public comment for that tonight. So if you want to, if you don't want to provide comment.
Yeah, if you would, you can always do public comment at the very end of the agenda, but it's not an agenda item, so. Thank you. The next item is public testimony. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on non-public hearing agenda items only. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. You're asked to please begin your time by telling us what agenda item or items you are speaking about. Please note that the testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the public hearing, and general public comment for subjects not on the agenda will be taken later in the evening. If there's a written comment that you wish to distribute to the City Council members, please hand it to the City Clerk. Okay, our first speaker is Bill Mitchell.
Good evening, members of the City Council. I'm here to talk about item 3B. I want to express my support for the city's efforts to strengthen its grant management and fund disbursement policies and procedures in the wake of the financial control issues surrounding the QueerWorks DAP Health Guaranteed Income Pilot Program. While the proposed changes are a positive step in enhancing the city's internal controls over financial management, it's a shame that such fundamental controls were not already in place. As the council knows, policies and procedures, no matter how well designed, are only as good as the people that are responsible for implementing and overseeing them, especially in ensuring that required documentation is submitted and adequately reviewed prior to any monetary disbursement. One area that the proposed enhancements could be further strengthened is establishing basic requirements for what constitutes a sufficient invoice and progress report, and ensuring that those requirements are spelled out in associated contractual documents. I look forward to further council updates on how the new policies and procedures are working and what additional measures, if any, may be added in the future to help maintain public confidence in the city's ability to efficiently and effectively manage its resources. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we don't have anyone else in person. Oh, do we? Okay, the next we have online, David Vignolo. Oh, you're in person? Did you want to speak in person? Okay, all right. That's it, they're all 2B. Is there any other public comment?
No further commenters?
Okay. The next item is the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar. We have a couple items with comments, which were not removed for separate discussion. City Clerk, please conduct the vote, and do you want to read item 1V?
You want me to read?
I think you have to read the ordinance for 1V.
For second reading, it's not required. If the council wishes to, you can, but we read it at first reading.
The next item is 2A, to adopt a resolution amending the city's comprehensive, oh wait, comments, I'm sorry. Councilmember DeHart?
It's 1R, right? Thank you.
10, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out on this item, which is the asphalt art project at the intersection of West Tramview Road and North Granada Avenue, that I asked if the neighborhood was aware that it's temporary, and staff reported back to me that the neighborhood is aware that this is not intended to be a long, going on forever crosswalk, and that they do get damaged, and that we have the artist under agreement that the artist will continue for a time to touch up, I think it was 2 years, is that right, Jay? For about 2 years, touch up the crosswalk and keep it looking nice and fresh, but wanting everybody to understand that it's a temporary crosswalk, and they do tend to be vandalized and tire tread marks and just general wear and tear. And I appreciate Marconi, who's the artist, who's committed to help keep it looking nice for as long as possible. So that's it.
Terrific. And Councilmember Holstridge?
Thank you. I actually have a few, if it's okay. Normally, we don't always have to say every item we're going to do. So I just wanted to flag a few for the public and the media paying attention, because often some of the important work that we do, and especially city staff does, goes in consent, and then the public doesn't know about it. So item 1AA is to approve a contract with Desert Arc Landscaping for ground maintenance, landscaping, and trash removal services at the airport. I was really honored to visit Desert Arc. They provide services for people with developmental disabilities or other disabilities in the community. And we were honored to meet with some of their clients and talk about the services that they do. And they provide lots of services to many cities in the Coachella Valley for this purpose. And I think it's so great that the city would contract with Desert Arc, which is a nonprofit and directly hires and provides jobs to people with disabilities in our community. And they do really amazing work. So it's great to see the city partnering with them on this. Mayor, would you like to add some comments as
I
well?
did want to add just to that one, it's also a local organization, which is not only keeps the money for people with disabilities, but also keeps the 1.6 million for local. So thanks to Desert Arc for this great work and
Congratulations.
and for partnering with the city on this. So
Thank
terrific.
you. Thank you and your clients for all their hard work. We so look forward to this partnership. And hopefully we might be able to look at other places in the city that Desert Arc and their clients might be able to provide services. Just a few other amazing things we're doing. Item 1J is approval of a contract services agreement for legal aid for housing assistance. We're really proud that we've invested in our own department to provide rental assistance and more for tenants and residents in Palm Springs. Really excited to see us continue our commitment to legal aid with a legal aid provider for those tenants as well. I just wanted to flag one more thing, which is our approval of a construction contract for $3.4 million for slurry seal and road repairs. And I know that's a big priority for this council and our communities. So make sure everyone knows about the amazing work that's always hidden in the consent calendar. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm also going to ask the city clerk to read the ordinance for 1B. 1V as in Victor.
In ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Springs, California, amending Palm Springs Municipal Code, Section 6.10082, regarding smoking prohibitions at the Palm Springs International Airport.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is 2A, but this has been being continued to a future meeting date. The next item is 2B, which is going to be continued until October 10th. That's the public hearing. We had some more public comment on that, and we also had somebody on Zoom. If you can make sure they know they could speak at the end or come back on October 10th. Okay, thank you. The next item is item 3A, which is a request to authorize refinancing of successor agency 2014 tax allocation bonds. May we have a staff report, please?
Pro Tem Council members, Chris Mooney, the Director of Finance and Treasurer. I have with me our financial advisor, Suzanne Harrell, and she has a short presentation on the refunding of our tax allocation bonds in the successor agency fund. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff. Do I have, oh, thank you. Short presentation on some refinancing opportunity for some of your outstanding tax allocation bonds. The successor agency, which succeeded the redevelopment agency when it was dissolved in 2012, still has 4 outstanding bond obligations. You can see 3 of them have been issued since dissolution, and 1 is from prior to dissolution. The way those obligations get funded are from what we used to call tax increment. Now it's called the Redevelopment Property Tax Trust Fund. That first goes to pay these obligations, and then whatever is left over after the bonds are paid and other obligations flows back to each of the taxing entities, which is the city, the county, the school districts, the college, any special districts, as surplus. So the bonds that can be refinanced right now are the 2014 tax allocation bonds. They have 10 years remaining. The current interest rate is 5%. When the staff report was drafted, the interest rates were about 2.92%. Today, they're about 2.83%. So we're expecting the savings, the reduction in debt service to be about 8.8% or a little over $600,000. Those savings will flow out as actually surplus RPTTF and will be distributed among the taxing entities. As I described before, the city's share of that surplus is about 23%, so the city will see an increase in its property tax distribution of about $140,000. The approval process for the bonds is that the City Council, acting as the successor agency, can approve the resolution that will authorize the issuance of the refunding bonds within certain parameters that are required by the Dissolution Act, which you have to show savings and things of that sort. Once you approve the resolution, the Countywide Oversight Board will review the transaction and then adopt its own resolution approving the refinancing. That gets submitted to the Department of Finance, and they have 60 days within which to review it and approve it. Once that happens, the bonds can be issued. So we're kind of expecting that to happen sometime in mid-November. So that is the recommendation, is to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of the bonds within certain parameters. And that's the end of my report.
Okay. Is there any discussion or additional questions from the council? No? No? Mayor Pro Tem? No? Okay. Well, I always like to hear about some savings, so thank you.
Thank you.
And is there a motion? Nope. A motion? Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item 3B, which is for updating of the processes and procedures for city grant management and fund disbursement. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Boy, you got to 3B really quickly. Again, good evening. Thanks to the members of council. I've got just about 7 or 8 slides here, so this should not go too long. I'm trying to summarize the main points that were in the staff report in front of you. And we're here to present recommendations to strengthen our nonprofit grant management and funds disbursement policies. So, clearly it's our duty as stewards of taxpayer dollars to continually better our processes and to ensure that funds are allocated toward our organizations that best align with the strategic vision of Palm Springs. So I've asked staff to come together, reflect on current funding practices, and come up with impactful recommendations to improve our city fund disbursement and grant management processes. Next slide, please. Are we on the next slide?
Nope.
There we go. So before I dive into some of the proposed changes and for the benefit of the public, I want to highlight why we do this. So as you all know, the city allocates funding to organizations aligned with the strategic vision for our city. Funding from the city helps to support small and large projects that significantly impact Palm Springs residents and the community. So for example, as you can see here, the Palm Springs International Film Festival benefits from city funds, which attract almost 100,000 visitors from outside of the Coachella Valley annually and promotes Palm Springs' values of creativity and diversity. A second example, the city supports the Community Food Bank run by the LGBTQ Community Center of the Desert. In fiscal year 23-24, the city's funding helped 12,000 households, or over 26,000 people, ensuring that those experiencing food instability had consistent access to food. Do the Right Thing has received funding through the city's budget, and you referenced this organization, Mr. Mayor, earlier, and through the Grants and Sponsorships Program. Since April 2023, they've given awards to 600 school-aged youth in the Coachella Valley to reinforce positive behavior, accomplishments, and attitudes. Do the Right Thing recently received the 2024 Community Delinquency Prevention Award from Riverside County. So we know that there's no perfect process of vetting organizations and allocating funds, The risk of fraud is always present. At the recommendation of many of you, I've asked our team to put together proposals to strengthen our processes and to ensure that taxpayer dollars are used to further the city's vision. And I'm asking council's feedback this evening as we talk about potentially approving these changes to ensure that we continue to provide excellent and responsive public services to enhance the quality of life for our residents. These policies will impact nonprofit organizations that seek funding from the City Council through the budget process or raised at community council meetings. Small grants, as you know, are administered by the city staff through our grants and sponsorship program, and they have their own set of rigorous policies. Next slide, please. So firstly, I'm proposing the elimination of lump sum payments for projects that exceed $75,000. And that coincides with my authority as city manager that, funding above that amount has to come to City Council. So that seemed like a really good strategic cutoff for us. I recommend that future contracts use a reimbursement payment process. I heard one of our speakers earlier today talk about that, where organizations must submit an invoice and progress reports in order to be reimbursed. However, I recognize, and the staff recognize, that reimbursement will not work for all programs. For example, the film festival receives payments split out over time, and we're currently doing that right now. At the discretion of the city manager, contracts can instead can split funds. For projects under $200,000, there would be a minimum of 2 payments spread at least 3 months apart. For projects above $200,000, there would be a minimum of 4 payments spread at least 3 months apart. These will be the only 2 payment methods available for receiving city funds under our recommendations. And those larger amounts don't apply to in too many situations here in the city. Next slide, please. Along with that, the city should require regular progress reports and invoices from all organizations receiving funding from the city. For contracts receiving reimbursements, regular reports and invoices will be required to receive reimbursement. For contracts whose funds are split over time, the city would tie receipt of regular reports to the payment schedule of the grant. Next slide, please. As well, we wanted to recommend that we establish minimum eligibility requirements for all nonprofit organizations partnered with the city. We want to ensure that organizations are in compliance and in good standing with the city, the state, and federal governments. The new due diligence practices align with the current city practices for the grant and sponsorship program, and I know I have here, when we get to the any discussion with you, Chris Mooney will be here, our finance director, along with Cindy Carnes, who manages our grant and sponsorship program as we get into any questions. Next slide, please. So next, the city should require all organizations receiving funds to submit an annual independent audit report. Organizations should already be performing an annual audit, so this does not represent a large additional burden from our standpoint. Now, we have received some discussion from some of you about the onerousness of having to do an audit every year, and maybe we can have a little more conversation about that later in the year. There are things where you can do procedures review for very small organizations that might not be used to doing full-blown audits every year, and we might want to think about that. But if you talk to our finance director, that internal audit requirement is probably the strongest and safest internal control that we can put in place. Next slide, please. We also recommend that the city designate a sponsoring city department and point person on staff who are responsible for the coordination and oversight of each program and contract. As we talked about this a little bit, that hasn't always been the case, and there's cases where, as a big organization, sometimes we get involved in organizations and some people are trying to do this and that. We really believe that there should be one point of contact, one person, one department, really in charge and responsible for every grant that we issue. This person and department would be responsible for writing the staff report, overseeing the contract, auditing, supporting documentation, and raising any issues in a timely manner with appropriate staff or council members. Next slide, please. Lastly, the city will establish a formal training program for city staff who, as part of their normal duties, may oversee a program or a contract. This will give staff a forum to discuss best practices, documentation, and disbursement procedures, and prepare staff to be designated as a point person for a contract when that comes up. We want them to be ready to properly manage a grant when it comes forward, and we really think we need to strengthen, our internal controls on this. It's an opportunity to strengthen the city's impact and safeguard taxpayer dollars. I look forward to working with the council and city staff to better serve our community and promote transparency and accountability, which is what we're really striving for. You've read over the council report. We've had some internal conversations about this. This is not to be a perfectly designed document at this point. This is really, we wanted to get your feedback this evening, get some of your thoughts, some areas where you think we need to strengthen some of the work here, where we need to maybe rethink some of the work here. So I know many of you have shared some thoughts and questions with me, and that's gone a long way to going into this document. And again, I know Cindy and Chris are here to join me for any part of the discussion that you might have. So, Mr. Mayor, we wanted to get right into any discussion or comments council members had.
Okay. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you. And Scott, thank you for this. I think it's an outstanding report, and I really appreciate you beginning this presentation by reminding all of us of the incredible number of nonprofit organizations we have in this city and the wonderful services that they provide to so many individuals because of funding that has been responsibly provided by the City of Palm Springs and responsibly spent by those organizations. So with that, just a couple of suggestions on the report that you have. Under vetting processes for new organizations, bullet point 3, you talk about organizations having the ability to provide their 990 and their 990F and or audited financial statements, rather than making that something that we have to ask for. I think it should be a requirement at the time that they file their application that they provide their 990, their 990F, and an up-to-date current audit for their organization. In addition to that, as a part of the application process, I believe organizations should provide us with a copy of their disbursement and check approval process so that we fully understand how it is that they are going to disperse money, as well as providing us with written documentation as to their processes and authorities when it comes to setting salaries for individuals in the organization, so that we know who is in charge of making a determination as to how money is going to be spent. And that if there are changes in any of those policies, that they have a requirement to notify us promptly of any changes in those policies. And lastly, if there are violations of those policies, that we are made aware of those violations, whether they impact us or not, so that we understand what corrective action has been taken. And the last thing I will say is this is going to be more work for us at the city, and that's going to require resources, and it's not my budget to put together, but I believe we're going to need additional auditing resources, and as an old auditor, auditors always pay for themselves.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Well, and Councilmember, if I could
Ask a
just
question.
comment on just one point that you made at the very end there. As you look at the report, there is going to be a lot of follow-up work by the staff, particularly with my office, as we need to design training programs to bring our employees that are going to be monitoring this work up to speed. I'll be talking to the finance director about the auditing processes and what that's going to entail. And then, just some strategies around how we assign different departments and staff to different pieces of this. So, as you know, Cindy manages the grants and sponsorship program. It's speaking on her behalf, it takes a tremendous amount of work, vetting all those organizations, coordinating our committee work, doing the follow-up. Certainly, we're more sensitive than ever right now, and she's just been doing a tremendous amount of work with all of our smaller organizations and making sure that we're in good standing and we feel good about the awards that we're making. So your point is well taken. It is going to take a lot of work, but it's necessary work.
Councilmember Gardner?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the comments from Councilmember Middleton. Mine are more focused on, have we given any thought into how we're going to assist some of these organizations that might be smaller, right? The threshold of $75,000, for some organizations that are smaller, they might be requesting $75,000 from the city, and that's their first ever big ask, right, of any organization. So they might not know all of they might not have an audit in place, like you said. Smaller organizations don't necessarily do these audits if they're usually looking at very small amounts of money every year. So do we have any ideas in terms of how we can connect folks to make sure that they're following the right processes? And as our small nonprofits are growing into nonprofits that might ask for this, do we have any resources available to them? Or do some exist already in the county or the state?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Chris and Cindy to come forward for any, maybe to make a few comments on this of themselves. So we're trying to, as we kind of work through these, we're trying to think about what we don't want to have happen is, for example, under the small grants programs, we give out small grants of $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. What we don't want to do is put some poor organization through a $15,000 compliance process to get the $2,000. That doesn't seem fair either. So, it's kind of that's the balancing part of it, that, we don't want maybe a small organization to have to do a $20,000 audit when we're giving them $1,500. So, I don't know, Chris, Cindy, if you have any comments based on how we're kind of working through it right now.
Yeah, I would just address Councilmember Gardner's question on the smaller organizations that may potentially receive $75,000 or more. I still believe the audit's a good control, but we can scale down that to what they call an agreed upon procedures audit. It's a very short audit. We could center the testing around internal controls so that it's more focused and more specific. And the cost is much lower than a full-blown audit. It's somewhere in the vicinity. It'll be below, $4,000, something like that. It's still a lot of money, I know, but I still think the control of having that in place is important.
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that we're able to still we have so many small nonprofits in our city, and sometimes they get opportunities to do bigger projects, and I want to make sure that they can do it. But of course, we need very good processes in place to make sure that they're trusted and that our funds are being spent properly. So I support that, but I'm also just interested, I'm saying this generally for the public now and other nonprofits, we do have some nonprofits that are very well established here in this city, and so perhaps if anyone out there is interested in being a resource, I hope that you'll reach out to us and let us know, because that would be a way that we could go about this. I know that there have been nonprofit CEOs or executive directors here in our valley who have been helpful to others. Love to see that mentorship continue. The other question I have is, have we given any thought to what will occur for instance, we have given significant sums, millions of dollars to a nonprofit in the past. Have we given any thought to what we would do in situations where it may be necessary to give a large sum in order to accomplish a certain goal? I'm thinking of when we gave DAP Health $2 million to fund housing. Are there certain situations that would be considered exceptions, and what would that look like?
I don't know if they would necessarily be exceptions. So for in that example, it's a
I'm sorry, exceptions in terms of the disbursement.
yeah of
Disbursement of funds.
So in the case you're talking about, was that related to the housing development project?
Yes.
So I think that kicks in, and what we said, what we wanted to do is distinguish this policy from all the number of large HUD contracts, housing development contracts. That has a whole different set of criteria.
Even if there's a nonprofit connected?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
great. Thank you.
auditing and everything else that's at a whole nother level.
Okay, that's
that,
perfect. Thank you.
Goes
Go
forward.
ahead.
May I ask a follow-up on that, please? So we've also funded like Desert AIDS Project for the expansion of their health center to, a large amount of money, like you're saying. And so that wouldn't be, I appreciate HUD or the CDBG funding, federal programs, special, separate, set-aside funding programs that we typically do. But what about in that case where we have done large grants that are needed right away for expansion of services or something like that? I could see the need. The art museum came and asked for a larger sum than this, and so what do we do if there is a need? Can we put in a city manager or city attorney approval or council process where it could at least have the option? Because I know we have a very large nonprofit sector. They rely on a very few set of donors. We don't have a lot of philanthropy in this region, and the city has been sort of stepping up to help build that out and support our nonprofits that often are barely scraping by. So I agree with my colleague, it'd be nice to have some protections where the city could at least consider that to keep a nonprofit open. We've done some granting with to build out an emergency shelter when it rains or it's too hot for homeless folks, et cetera. You could imagine the circumstances where you might not want to dole it out, according to these measures. Does that make sense? Just for if a lump sum is necessary.
Yep.
So how are you going to define which categories are
Well, what
included?
I would say, so when you reference the art museum, that was a large grant disbursement to the organization above the 200,000 level, and in that case, it would be on a quarterly disbursement process. If you're talking about an organization that's maybe a little unproven, and it's a large grant amount, I think that the whole point of these policies is it shouldn't be a lump sum disbursement. There would have to be some extenuating circumstances, I think. And in those cases, the city manager will not have the authority to move forward with an appointment. That's something that's going to fall into the city council authority realm. And that's where we would have to have some discussions about our whole process for larger grants.
Yeah, if I could just comment, something like the art museum, that is something that easily could be a quarterly basis. That's fine. Something like DAP, and we may have given millions for. I actually do believe there could be benchmarks and timing over that. It's not the sole source of funding, and so I think as part of the agreements going forward, it would be we obviously want to make sure they build the housing, so there could be tied to certain benchmarks in whatever process they're doing, whether we've done that with the Monarch Housing and with other ones as well, that we provided over time based upon benchmarks that they have invested and are moving forward. So I think there is other processes for doing it over time. It may not have to be, and you put here, I think, would be a minimum of 2 payments with each 3 months apart. And so that is something to be determined based on the project. But that would make sense to me.
Just, I'm remembering back, we funded a few homeless service providers to build up an emergency shelter. So hopefully we won't need to do that again. We did that a lot of summers in a row before we had a navigation center. Now we have that. So hopefully that problem is solved. But we have seen instances where we had to fund $125,000 to have them do the startup cost to start up a shelter. And so I just want to make sure you're thinking through those circumstances, because you wouldn't want to not be able to provide shelter and wait for a council meeting, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Any other comments for council or questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, is Grace done?
No, that was it. That was just the two.
So a couple questions, and thank you for what folks have already brought forward. I don't want us to get into a position where we're hurting small organizations. On the vetting process for new organizations, on the second page, we say grant funding outside of small grants and sponsorship program. Above $75,000 requires city council approval. Are the proposed policy 1 through 10, are those items that are going to be used for grant funding in the small grants and scholarship or sponsorship program?
They are, and I'd like Ms. Carnes to talk a little bit about how we follow up with those small organizations, what we ask them for, and how that comports with how it's working and how we're doing. So, Cindy?
Good evening, Council. Cindy Karen, Special Assistant to the City Manager. The items that are listed, they do apply to the small grants. The only thing that we're not asking them for initially is their 990s. We reserve the right to ask for them. But in order to qualify for the small grants and sponsorship program, you have to be a verified nonprofit. The process that we go through to verify an organization's eligibility is we confirm their status with the IRS. We confirm that they're in good standing with the Secretary of State. We confirm that they have registered with the Department of Justice's Attorney General's Registry of Charities and Fundraisers, and we verify that they're standing with the Franchise Tax Board. If you're not a nonprofit, you're not eligible for that program currently. You have to be a 501c3. And that's the process we use for funding of $1,000 all the way up to, I think our highest amount that we fund is $100,000, and that's, there's a couple of organizations that get more than 75. I think there's only 2, but that's our process for all of them.
What do we do with civic clubs and social clubs that are not incorporated as a 501c3?
We do have some organizations that can still qualify, public benefit corporations. We have one that's a 501c6, I believe, and they are eligible because the intent of this program, you know, assuming that they meet eligibility requirements, is to provide a benefit to the public. That's really the main criteria when we're looking at how we're going to allocate these funds and approve them. There has to be a public benefit. The community needs to receive something for this. So there is some organizations, the Chamber of Commerce, for instance, they're not a 501c3. I think they're a 501c6. I'd have to ask city attorney to help me with that one. But they're still eligible. They potentially are still eligible.
Mm-hmm. So we're not asking for a 990-N, which your smaller organizations would be able to provide. So the 990N is a common form for the smaller organizations, and I think we should accept that for an organization who, if they're not generating more than $25,000 a year, they can file the 990N. And I question we don't define, in the IRS defines 501c3, and there's 7 chapters or something like that under the 501c. I think we should define what we really are intending to fund in the 501c, because a C5 or a C4 is a political organization, and I'm not sure, I don't think our grant sponsorship monies should be going to organizations that, political-based organizations. And then C5s are labor unions. So I think those 2 categories there could be controversial that we wouldn't want to be involved with. But specifically saying 501c3s, C6, C7, that can meet our criteria, I think would work. But I think we need to define, not exclude people, or not include people who we wouldn't want to be funding.
Sure. We can certainly start doing that. I will let you know that anybody that's outside of a clear 501c3 for me, I review with the city attorney to make sure that he and his office are looking at those before we go any further. I will also tell you that part of our criteria, pardon me, organizations are not allowed to use the funding for any political purposes. That is stated in our application and in our criteria, nor can they use them for religious purposes. That's a condition of the grant.
Yeah, okay.
And every organization, pardon me, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, we execute funding agreements with every single one of these, whether they're getting $1,000 or $10,000. Everybody has to execute a funding agreement with us.
I think maybe just a little further definition on item 2 that says anything other than 501c3 would be reviewed by staff and city attorney or
Great,
something.
we can definitely do that.
Okay, so you got the 990N. And then another question on, we say if on the memorandum on funding large projects in lump sum, we say that if reimbursement will not work for a particular project, the city manager is authorized instead to split funds into a minimum of 2 payments. And then the rest of the policy that we've discussed applies. Who decides if reimbursement will not work for a particular project?
I'm going to defer to our finance director on that one.
I think the way we would handle that is we would try to find a method for reimbursement, because that's the most appropriate way to fund these organizations over $75,000. If there wasn't a way that we could find, if it wasn't a project, if it was something else, then we would just defer. I think we'd probably discuss that internally. City manager would weigh in, I'm sure. But I think that if we tried to, we will always try to find a way to have reimbursements be the main way to fund. But if we can't find a way to do that, we will do the other.
Can I?
Yeah.
And I think with all the other measures we have in place, I would rather see it turned around. We would not be seeking reimbursement as the primary source, because we're putting small organizations at risk here. How many of our small organizations, if they're doing a $10,000 event, don't have that $10,000 to go front all the bills, but we're telling them, you got to go pay for everything, then send us the bills, and then we'll give you your money. So this would hurt many of our small organizations by requiring a reimbursement.
Well, I think the this is for organizations over 75,000. So this is not affecting any of our small grants and sponsorship program.
So a
It's just those-
small nonprofit that is operating under $100,000 a year doesn't have $75,000 extra dollars to front the payment of a program in advance to then get a receipt. So it won't hurt your multi-million-dollar organizations. It will hurt hundreds of our organizations that don't generate the monies that, the DAPs do, the center does. So I think that we need to work on how that's positioned.
Can I just clarify, the receipts are for ones that do 75,000 or more, the receipt base?
That's correct.
And so there's not hundreds, there's only a few that do 75,000 or more that we pay to.
Organizations. Say an organization that only generates $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year, they submit to the city to do a special program, clean up in the city or something. Well, they have to front all those bills for that special program before the city will give them the $75,000.
That's not too common when we do that. The ones that are 75,000 are like the Mizell, the Boys and Girls Club, the Film Festival, the Art Museum.
We
so-
can't assume what's going to be in the future because what happened in the past.
I understand, so let me finish. So what I would say is that if it's an organization that is only $100,000 that wants $75,000 in advance, I would say that might have to have a significant more approval process. Then to give an organization that only does 100,000, to give 75,000 up front, it may be great work, but I think we need some assurance they're actually going to do it, which is very rare occasion, I think, right? I mean, this is not, I don't know that we've ever done a very small organization giving them more than 75,000. Have we?
I don't recall that we've done that. Like you said, our history is that we give them to mostly larger organizations.
So maybe you can find out something that would have to come to council as a consent item or something like that so that it gets fully reviewed. So that if there is an organization that falls out of these categories that needs it up front, a large sum that it comes to council perhaps. I mean,
Well, any grant above $75,000 will go to council.
Well, we do have a couple
Unless
organizations that have funding above 75 in our small grants and sponsorships program.
There's only two. There's
only
the
two.
Mizell and the
Yes.
Boys and Girls Club, but those are part of the grant and sponsorship
to Mayor-
program. They're not outside of the program that we're,
Right, but to Mayor Pro Tem's point, if they come back, if there's a brand-new organization that suddenly is doing fantastic work that they want to give $100,000 or $75,000 to, and they need it up front, then we should figure out some other additional approval that beyond staff. Does that make
So,
sense?
Going back to what I was asking, how do we, if reimbursement will not work for a particular project, I think that needs to be defined. What does it mean that if it will not work? We're leaving this open for broad
Yeah,
interpretation.
we can certainly consider to clarify that for sure.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it is a case-by-case basis. I think that we're going to look at these larger organizations, but we can definitely try to make that more clear in the policy.
Yeah, I think that's all that needs. And I thought it was a really good suggestion that we got in public comment on, so we're not getting 100 different invoice types with all kinds of different information, that if there's just an invoice template that people can populate, would be a great time saver, especially during a review process. If we're only letting this thing populate specific information that we're looking for, I think that was a great idea that we got from public comment. And that was it for me. Thank you.
And Councilmember Holsted, you had one more comment? I have some too.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a follow-up, but I wanted to ask a few questions and comments. So this is I just want to clarify what it applies to. So they were asking about what categories it might apply to and the conversation about reimbursement. So if it's a Measure J project and an actual capital project, it won't apply. These rules will not apply to that. It'll go through the Measure J process. These are and it's not applying to the city's grants and sponsorship program because staff has their own internal controls for that. yet. So it's for those additional requests directly to city council. Is that right? Just so the public understands?
That's correct.
So we do sometimes get requests for projects, capital projects. And so can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, sometimes it depends on the budget and the money being fungible and sort of are we pulling from Measure J? But we do often, we have even granted out to Mizell for, I think that was Measure J for a new kitchen, right? But we have done a number of types of funding that aren't for a reimbursement basis or that might not work. So can you just make sure we're thinking through all the categories of types of requests we get? Because we do get a lot, and sometimes it's us being creative about how to obtain other funds or, learning about other sources or something like that.
Yeah, so Measure J specifically, you're right, a lot of those applications that come in for community-initiated projects or any other projects, those are really city-ran projects, but we do a few grants from that program, like the Mizell Senior Center Kitchen that we granted. I believe that this policy should apply to those grants as well. Now, they go through a little bit different process because there's a commission approval and things like that they have to follow, and they come back to city council for approval as well. So, but I do believe that we should, if we grant funds out of the program, we should follow this policy and our small grants and sponsorships policy.
Right, I agree. I think why wouldn't we just set a granting policy that applies broadly? Because I think sometimes in Palm Springs we set too many types of categories and then it gets complicated. If you're a nonprofit and you're saying, I'm applying for Measure J funding for this is required. I'm applying for grants and sponsorship. This is different amount of information is required. It just gets hard for nonprofits to navigate that because we have most of our nonprofits, like you're saying, are small and understaffed or volunteer. They don't have the capacity to do a lot of this. So I agree with you. I have a bigger, broader question. Sorry, I've been waiting my turn to go. But for external, have you thought about external management of grants and sponsorships? What do other cities do? So I've seen this program grow in the last 7 years. And so originally we were sort of only granting to a small group of organizations, Film Festival, Mizell, a few others like that. And then we, the city council, over the last few councils, has really wanted to invest more money into the community, especially to support small nonprofits and to provide services, rent relief, homelessness services, et cetera, right? And so it's really grown. And so I've seen, and the city grants and sponsorship program used to be city council and city committee. So I used to serve on the city committee, city council subcommittee with Mayor Moon, and we'd make recommendations to city staff, to the city council directly, even though we're not staff. And so staff has taken that on, but now staff is kind of making those decisions that are policy decisions for the council, and it just gets a little complicated. And it seems like we have more than maybe we'd want. It's taking more work to really provide all of that accounting and grant work that we really need to do of Cindy and the team. So have you thought about hiring an external grant management program or consultants that can really oversee this process based on best practices and we're not having like staff capacity issues?
We haven't really thought about hiring externally. Now, I oversee an internal auditing department. That's something that maybe we could use to bring them in if we thought it was necessary to help vet an organization. We are, in our new policy, we are going to be making sure that there is a person, a department head, that is going to oversee the grant and make sure that it's managed properly and follows the policy. And so I think that's important to know that that's going to be a part of the policy, and we will have, city manager will assign a department director to make sure that the organization's adhering to the policy.
I'm just concerned putting it on the department director who already has so much to do and, isn't an expert in grant management. And so that's a little, I know you are and your team will, but that's a little, I prefer to see it go to people with extensive grant management services and making sure nothing's falling through the cracks.
We can certainly consider that, Councilmember Hostage, certainly.
So just other comments. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem about the public comment. Thank you for that. I really appreciate the public ideas and suggestions. You know, I think Councilmember Middleton said this, but ensuring that it has the Secretary of State person for process, the agents for the organization, and the board of directors, especially for council, knowing conflict rules and all of these extra ethical rules we put on ourselves. We want to make sure we're following that and have the information. I'd very much like to see if there are substantial changes to an MOU approved by council with a grantee organization receiving $75,000 or more in city funding. It has to come back to council for any changes, and that, you know, that process happens. You know, I got a public comment about requesting letters of reference or other, you know, ways to find information about a new organization that hasn't received city funding. So if you could assess that, that might be a good idea, so we can get other grantees or other grantors, people who've funded that organization, to vouch for them. I just want to think about reporting. So what happens right now is the city often does grants and sponsorships or other funding, the city council, and then we just don't hear back. We see it in the community. So if you could think through, we don't want to create a lot of extra work for the nonprofits or for staff, but just reporting, like annual updates to the city and receive and file to city council and the public, because these are taxpayer dollars and we want to make sure taxpayers are seeing what they're getting, what the benefit of their funding is. And then I've raised this a few times about a clear and comprehensive policy for in-kind sponsorships, of facility rentals, fees, the amount we request tenants. We have all these different tenants who are nonprofits, and they're all paying different amounts. And you know what I mean? We should just have like across the board standards so that it's clear and you know what you're going to get, and it's not political in any way, because we really want to help nonprofits provide more services. You know, the city isn't a service provider. We're not able to provide a lot of these services, and we really rely on these nonprofits. And then you know, what I said earlier about extenuating circumstances, because we've done some really good work and funded some really reputable organizations like Martha's Village and Kitchen to like get something up and running right away, and those are exigent circumstances. And I think those are my last question. So I have one question, which is, it states be located in or provide services in the city of Palm Springs. We've gone back and forth in this when we've done grants and sponsorships, but we don't require that they're based in Palm Springs or be in Palm Springs, as long as they're providing services to Palm Springs residents. And so we funded a lot of organizations like that. So this looked too broad to me for what we currently allow. Is that right?
Well, I can speak to the small grants and sponsorships. For that program, we do have some organizations that have applied that are not physically located in Palm Springs, but the services that they are providing are, for instance, to Palm Springs Unified School District students, the high school. They offer services at Ruth Hardy Park, programs. So the services that they're providing, even if they're not located here, are provided to our residents in Palm Springs.
So I think I would change it. It says be located in or provide services, and council, let me hear what you think. In the city of Palm Springs, the rent is incredibly expensive in Palm Springs. We've had some Palm Springs organizations go to Cathedral City, just a little bit away. They're still providing, I know on our grants and sponsorship application, it says how many Palm Springs residents are you serving? And it says, you know, 15,000 or whatever it is. So I just want us to think through making sure we're talking about funding going to Palm Springs residents, but not requiring that they have a primary place of business in Palm Springs or even providing the direct services.
I think that is how we do it. They don't have to be physically located, their offices, but the service they provide has to be physically located
As part
here.
of the small grants and sponsorships, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that this is written too specific for what I think we should be, we've allowed other types of funding for services for Palm Springs residents. We've done that for a few others, yeah. but happy to hear what my colleagues think. Thank you. Those are all my comments.
What does the language say specifically? It says be located in or provide services in Palm Springs. What is the change that you're proposing to that?
I think it says what you're trying to do.
I think it says.
No, what if so you're saying they have to specifically provide the services within the city boundaries. So what if they're a mental health provider that's doing, mental health services on Zoom for Palm Springs residents, but they're located in Cathedral City? Do you not want to fund anything that's not based specifically in the city boundaries?
Or
If their service is provided to Palm Springs residents who are in
It's
Palm
vague.
Springs, then I think it makes sense.
Okay.
If it is a daycare center in India, where Palm Springs residents may go to, that does not seem something, it seems like a great project, but that doesn't seem within our scope, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not limiting.
I should mention, I think we provide services to something like 100 different nonprofits in our city. Does that sound about right?
This year, we received 107 total applications. We're funding approximately 80 of those.
And plus, we have other ones that are outside of the small grants and
Sure.
sponsorship. So
Yes.
Film Festival, Art Museum, other ones. So there's a lot of organizations, and I just, I think it's great that we're providing funding for these organizations. I thank you and the staff for how much time. I know it's a lot that goes into that. And a lot of these organizations, places like the Mizell or the LGBT Center or the Food Bank, they're providing the services to our residents that government can't provide, and probably should provide, but we don't have the resources to do it, and they end up getting their own additional private fundraising. So these are great organizations, and then you have other ones like our arts and culture, which add to our enjoyment of our residents and our economy, and so I appreciate that. I actually, just on that line, one thing I wanted to say is, these are businesses in Palm Springs, and city manager, we do have a business liaison. So in terms of, I don't want to offer their services up, but it seems like if they're operating a business in Palm Springs, that they should be connected with our business liaison if there is help that they can give them, not necessarily in filling out a whole application, but in helping other types of support.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. We've got, we're creating brand new business districts in the community now, so that we're probably out and about working with small businesses throughout the community more than ever, and connecting them to services. So I think we approved 2 or 3 more business districts today. So we want to keep that going.
And some of these are nonprofits, so we just make sure that they're looped in. Another question, I know we go through the different documents. In that specifically is to get the list of the board of directors for different organizations. Is that in there? For nonprofits are required to have a board of directors.
That is something we require from the small grants and sponsorships. They do have to provide a list of their
Is
board
it
of
in
directors.
all of ours? Do we?
it's in the Secretary of State requirement, and it's in the charitable
So
trust
it's something
requirement
that we
with
should
the
check.
Attorney
I
General.
mean, make sure we know who that is, verify that these are real people as a board of directors. I would also suggest that for organizations that get funds that go over time for something, and I know we talked about spacing it out, that there may be a certain period where we have to review and make sure that, if it goes over a year, that they have to resubmit documents. We've had ones that have done long-term funding. We talked about like DAP, which obviously is still around, but we want to make sure if we give a large sum of money that after a year, we know that they are still in good standing, I think, or whatever period of time. So I would add that. For new organizations, I do think we should take caution if they haven't been in existence for that long on how much funding they get. I think that is something that we should be very careful about. Generally, if they've gone through all of these documents and processes, they've been in existence for a little while, but we want to make sure their operations have been in existence so that we are not the first and primary funder. I also think we should look at what percentage of the budget. I know Mayor Pro Tem brought up an organization that does 100,000. We're donating 75,000. I think that should be something that we look at with extreme caution, just to make sure that they are financially viable. Some of them do it because they have very little expenses and costs, and that's great. But other ones, we would just want to make sure that if we're going to be the bulk of, or the majority of their funding, that they have, that they're not going to, that they're going to be around to carry out the services. I think those were mainly my comments that wasn't covered by the rest of council. I think we have a pretty robust plan here. Is there anything else anybody would like to add? Oh, okay. We'll start with Councilmember Middleton.
Right, thank you. Just a couple of comments based on what I've heard from my colleagues. I am certainly open to providing funding to an organization that has a physical location outside of Palm Springs but is serving Palm Springs residents. But I do not want to be providing funding for them to provide services outside of Palm Springs to people who are not residents of Palm Springs. And I would much prefer that they actually have their location in Palm Springs. When it comes to the comments that the mayor just made regarding new organizations, I certainly want to be helpful to new nonprofits, but I could not agree more with the mayor's comments that we should be incredibly careful when it comes to new organizations as to what percentage of funding it is that we are providing to them. And I do not have a specific figure in mind, but organizations that are going to get anything above $75,000 should have demonstrated their capacity as an organization to manage funds of that nature and do so independent of any funding from the city of Palm Springs. Thank you.
Actually, that's a good point. We can't be the one that they solely rely on unless we're paying for a specific service, but yeah. Councilmember Garner, did you have more comments?
I did. I did want to just ask for the city attorney maybe to have eyes on that number one, be located in or provide services in the city of Palm Springs. I agree. The attorneys are here saying it is vague. We provide, for instance, we fund legal services, legal aid. It's located in Riverside, but we fund them because it's the only legal aid to provide services to our residents in Palm Springs. So just if we could have the city attorney clarify that in the next reading. Thank you.
Any other comments, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, thank you. I did have on item 3, under the vetting process on item 3, Chris, you mentioned it, the city manager, you mentioned it, the audited financial statements. I think we definitely need to add to the wording there. Because if we can have $1 million nonprofit organization, and they're not required to have a full audit. They're not even required to have a review. The charitable trust with the Attorney General basically has them provide a balance sheet, which they can handwrite if they wanted to. So I think putting a burden on an organization that doesn't already require an audited statement, audited financials, I think we're asking for too much. Our larger organizations, or even some of the $1 million organizations who get grants or federal funding or state funding, part of those grants require a certain audit. So yes, they will be able to comply, but their organization is of the structure that they're able to comply with that. But I don't know how many we would have in town that don't conduct an audited financial. Some of the smaller groups would do a review, and others would just be submitting their balance sheet when they're applying for some type of a project or funding. So I think that's that's placing too big of a burden on smaller organizations to require the audited financial statement, unless we're willing to pay for it. If the city would up their contribution to that organization to pay for an audited financial statement, we may have more nonprofits applying so we can get those audited financials paid for.
Yeah, I don't think we'd offer that up, Mayor Pro Tem. But I would just, that's why I offered up kind of the shorter review that's much less expensive than a full-blown audit, that's centered around internal controls, because in my opinion, That's the important part of getting the independent audits, because they will do an internal control review and they will opine on those internal controls in their finished product. So if a good organization has good internal controls, I think that makes us feel a little more comfortable. I am, I think the review is much less expensive. It's not as arduous. It's not as demanding on the organization. It's a day or two after you provide the information. That's all it lasts, and it's much cheaper. And I would still recommend that.
Mm-hmm. I'm against requiring the audited or staying the review. It's putting an undue burden on small organizations. Even if we're going to tell them, okay, you've got to go pay $5,000 now in order to submit to get this grant from the city. We should be able to get their balance sheet. If it's good enough for the Attorney General to not require reviewed or audited financial statements, it should be good enough for the city of Palm Springs that we're not requiring our smallest of our organizations to take on that burden.
I don't know how, maybe, I mean, we gave a lot of different direction and discussion in this, and I think this is an important document, so I don't know, I mean, I feel like we should be able to see something come back. I don't want to create a lot of work, but you've got a lot to digest from all the different comments here. Is there a document that you'll create, or?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, you've given us a lot of tremendous good comments. I've made a lot of notes here. I think there's some tweaking, some stuff that we can do. We can put some more definitions in place. Mayor Pro Tem, when we've talked a little bit about this with the finance director, we really thought, that it wouldn't impact too many small nonprofits because they're already doing that. So I'd like to go back and take a look at that a little more and see. Obviously the attorney, they may not require it at the state, but we just want to make sure we're the ones handing out money. And so we just want to make sure that we're, it's passing the basic tests that need to be done. And it's easy to say auditing is one easy way to do it. It will definitely give us a lot of faith in the process. For smaller programs, I'd like to talk to the finance director a little more about the review process, if we can do that, if there's even a simpler way we can do that. We really think most of the organizations we work with are used to doing audits and doing that. But to your point, maybe we're missing the boat on that a little bit with some very small organizations. So I think that's something we'll come back with.
Just to respond, I think we should go, these are public funds that we're giving out, that we should go beyond the basic test, but we should actually look at whether specific examples of some that may be overly burdened by this process and find out if there's an alternative. Councilman Gardner.
Thank you. Yeah, this goes back to the initial comments that I had in terms of just what are we going to do to offer some sort of support? Can we just do a little bit of research to find out if there are audit groups that offer special pricing, or are just different ways that we can help the organizations as they grow? Because I just think of so many organizations in our city, the center, for instance, they started off meeting in someone's house and now they have these massive events, right? But they certainly probably needed a lot of assistance as they grew to become what they are today. So I just think if we are going to put these rules on them that they, like Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem said, doesn't apply in their normal course of business, can we assist them in making sure that they now can comply? Because eventually they will, right? And that's great. And we want to do this robust system, but we also want to support them. So that's really all it is just offering support.
Okay, I think you've got a lot to work with. I would ask that we have something come back to council, whether it's a final document so that we have all of this, and if there's understanding that there will have to be more work, but I think the clear direction is to pay very close attention to this going forward, and to be able to adjust over time as we grow and things change. And we've had some things that may be, like looking at an outside firm is really could be a long-term thing. We should keep that on the radar, even if it's not immediately possible. Do we need to take I don't think we need to take any vote on this. We'll just wait till next
I
time.
don't think we were expecting any particular action,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Is there any other questions for council that we haven't answered on this direction? Okay. Thank you very much, Chris, Cindy, and Scott, and City Manager. That was terrific. Next item is going to be public comment. Before we do, I just want to make one quick comment I meant to do at the beginning. Palm Springs currently has 4 of our firefighters up at the line fire. Fighting that fire. They've been there for several days, and I just want to wish them all, thank them for their service, and wish them all a safe return, and I'm sure our community aligns with that, hopefully. So next, we'll go to public comment on non-agenda items. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Although the City Council values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed in the agenda. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. We have a lot of speakers, so I'm going to ask you to please watch the clock so you don't get cut off in the middle. The first speaker is Belinda Salgado, followed by Lorenzo R. Saldivar. In fact, I can start giving the names and you can line up if that's probably easier. After Lorenzo Saldivar is Pearl Devers, Lasanta Patton, Charlie Johnson, Jovita Ayala, so I can read that, and then Gloria Holland Thompson. Okay, our first speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Belinda Salgado, and I was born here in Palm Springs, but I just wanted to say that I just wanted you guys to, I had the word in my mouth, but I just wanted you to.
Just could you speak into the microphone,
I'm
please?
sorry. I'm a little confused, but I just wanted to tell you I'm a survivor, and I just wanted you to really do what is right. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, if you could line up along the wall, then we can make sure everybody gets their time. So the next speaker is Lorenzo Saldivar, followed by Pearl Devers, and then Lasanda Patton. Devers, I'm sorry, of course. Lorenzo Saldivar? No? Pearl Devers. And then followed by Lasanta Patton.
Hello, Pearl Devers here. Dear Mayor Bernstein and members of the City Council, I'm writing in response to the letter from City Attorney Jeffrey Ballinger, dated September 10th, 2024, which was sent to Reva Martin, attorney for Section 14 survivors, and shared with me upon receipt. I must begin by expressing how deeply disappointed I am in each member of this council. For years, you have shamefully strung me and other Section 14 survivors along with promises made, promises broken. In the process, you have re-traumatized us all, forcing us to relive the nightmare that the city inflicted upon us when it burned down our community and our homes. It is painfully clear that just like in the 1950s and the 1960s, our voices and our contributions just do not matter to you. By reneging on your commitment to consider the proposal that we sent to you on July 2nd at today's council meeting, after promising us for weeks that you would send a clear message to all of those meetings and promises were doing nothing more than a delay tactic. Now you want to defer any discussions of Section 14 until after this so-called historical context study. That is yet another delay tactic, and for us it's very shameful. The history of Section 14 is well documented. The city's role in the destruction of our homes has been acknowledged on multiple occasions, including by members of this council in your own words. Why another study? Anyway, despite this, you seem to disregard our lived experiences in favor of rewriting our history with a disingenuous study conducted by an architectural firm with no expertise in this area and not one single person of color in their leadership.
Ms. Devers, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Asanta Patton, followed by Yovita Ayala, and then Charlie Johnson, and then Gloria Holland Thompson. Asanta Patton.
Hello, my name is LaSanta Patton. I'm here to support Section 14. I would like to complete the letter by Pearl Devers. We were not consulted in the hiring of this firm, nor will we be participating in the disingenuous study. As such, whatever report is produced will be wholly incomplete and a waste of city's time and resources. As you know, the Section 14 survivors are in our twilight years. We are seniors. Some of our fellow survivors have passed on even since we began this process. But for those of us who are here, I can assure you that we are not going anywhere. We will continue to tell our stories here in Palm Springs and Sacramento and around the country. We will use every available avenue to fight for justice, and we are confident that with so many national, state, and local supporters, we will win. We will not be strung along any further. Our supporters and the Section 14 section survivors will see you downtown during tourist season, in the state legislative, the halls of Congress, and in court. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Yovita Ayala, followed by Charlie Johnson, and then Gloria Holland Thompson. She's not here?
Jovita is not here. You guys waited too long for her. She had something to do.
Okay. The
But
next speaker
anyway.
is Charlie Johnson, and then Gloria Holland Thompson.
Is Charlie Johnson here? Come on, hon.
Afternoon. You know, when I first came to Palm Springs, it was only 1,900 people that lived in Palm Springs during that time. And, you know, the conditions were horrifying, that we was on this Section 14 from arenas that ran into the Catholic Church. But, you know, you all have a responsibility, you know, for that. And I just like to say, I don't have a reverse in me. So that means I can only go straight forward. And it means that, hey, we're not going to go back. We're going forward on this matter as to Section 14. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Gloria Holland Thompson, followed by Sharon Hendricks, and then Wendell Crawford Sr. Please start.
Okay, this is to all you guys and whoever else it applies to. Of course, you know I'm Gloria Holland Thompson. I'm a board member of Section 14 and Survivors and Descendants. I'm not here to beg you guys for anything. I'm only asking you to pay for what you stole from our parents, with no regards to their children watching you as you burn down our community. Their well-being as human was disregarded. For anyone to do such a thing has to be subhuman, and to feel you do not have to make the people that was harmed whole again is asinine, okay? When you apologized, it gave us some kind of hope that maybe you had feelings for others and wanted to make a wrong right, or attempt to just clear your own conscience. We thought, yes, maybe these people have morals, but to strangle us along for almost 4 years is just a delay tactic and very insulting. Thank you for the $4.7 million offer, but that was an insult as well as, you know, that says we don't really value you. That is what I heard. Put yourself in our shoes and make your decision on that. And that will let us know what you are, okay? And who you are and how you think. Enough. We are calling BS on the lies and broken promises. Oh, you smiling. This is funny, huh? Yeah, it's funny to him. Yeah, it's funny to you. Because your mind is already made up. Because you don't care. I can tell just by how pink your face is. You know? So, yeah. So I'll never tell my story again. You'll never hear that again. You already know.
Thank
All
you.
we want you to do is
Miss-
stop lying and do the right
Yes,
thing.
thank you, Ms. Helen Thompson. The next speaker is Sharon Hendricks, followed by Wendell Crawford Sr., and then Kenneth Monteiro, sorry. Ms. Hendricks.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Hendricks, and I am here because you guys promised that you would handle this. You apologized. You affected not only one member of my family, my grandmother who also had a boarding house, my grandfather who came from Mississippi who is a vet who fought for this country. You burned him out of his house. When I say you, I say the city of Palm Springs. This has gone on long enough. If we take all your homes, is that going to be sufficient enough to cover the price that you want to give all these families? Add it up. Do you really think the amount that you're giving is sufficient? Really, I sit here for hours listening to you guys talk about money and funding for different things when we built this community. My father built this community. My grandmother built this community. And when I say my grandmother, yes, in the 50s, she was working, cleaning houses, keeping her house calm. You took the sense of community. You inflicted pain on my father, who will speak later. My grandfather, rest his soul, is gone. He's gone. My grandmother's gone. They bought the house. My great-grandmother, it wasn't one house. Those were two houses with many children in it. Those burdens passed on to me and my cousins and our kids and our kids. I grew up in the city of Palm Springs. I worked for the city, within the city limits, for the state of California. This is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. You need to do what you say you're going to do. You need to stop lying. You need to stop putting it off. We don't care about the slurry on the streets. We need our property back. We need the sense of community. We need what you said you were going to do. These people who are doing these studies, they've never lived here. They don't know this community. You didn't ask anyone. Have you spoken to any of the survivors, recorded their conversations, since you want to build a cultural center so you can capture it, because you're waiting for them to die off? But we're not going nowhere.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks.
We're not going back. We're
Thank you.
not going back. We're flipping the page forward.
Okay, thank
And
you.
so
Your time
when
is
that
up.
comes to buying, spending our money, you'll see
Miss-
it in the system.
Thank you. The next speaker is Wendell Crawford Sr., followed by Kenneth Monteiro, and then Eric Baker.
How you doing? My name is Wendell Crawford, Senior, and what I want to show you is a visual. You can all see this. This is a family. This is a family from Section 14. We moved here in 1955. There's a father, a vet, with his wife and children. Okay? He moved his family here in hopes of seeking a better opportunity and a better life here on Section 14, or the reservation as we know it. And only to have, after a short while, to be illegally raised from this community, from this neighborhood that he brought his family to. So right now, we're here some 50, 60 years later, in hopes that you will do the right thing. You will make right the wrongs that were done to this community and so many of the families here. So that's all we're asking, that in your authority, that you do the right thing. And you know what the right thing is. We've been here, we've been asking, so now the ball is in your court. We hope that you will do justice for us.
Thank you. The next speaker is Kenneth Monteiro, followed by Eric Baker, and then Willie Moore.
Good evening, council members. And I know you know, but we're going to say it. When we speak to you as a city, it's because you're sitting in the seats right now. Someone else was sitting there before. Doesn't matter, you're sitting in the seats. So good evening. My name is Kenneth Monteiro. I'm here to speak to the issue on Section 14. I'm a very proud resident of Palm Springs. I'm not a survivor of the forcible removal of Section 14. I'm not a descendant of such. I happen to be a privileged resident of what was Section 14 and in the region of the city. I visited here since the 1990s. Had no intentions of ever living here, came down here for the amenities, get in, get out, because I saw no black and brown people. It was not until I established a relationship with many of the folks that you're seeing here and learning that there was a vibrant black community, and in fact, a vibrant black community where I'm now living in a predominantly white neighborhood, that brought us down here. That community brought us down here. That community brought down enough of us who are black and brown from Northern California, so if that's a bad thing, just truth in advertising. But we created a group called the Brothers of the Desert because we'd moved down here and we felt irresponsible if we did not give back to the community that we were in. One of the things we thought we needed to be responsible for was to support our neighbors who built the city that we're in, and we're now benefiting. So sadly, I want to say that we tend to live in the United States for black people in three parts. You're currently enslaved, you're managing Jim Crow, or you're doing a civil right to right a civil wrong. Most of America is always still in Jim Crow. Just saying that descriptively, not wonderful, still in Massachusetts where I was born, still there. So the question is, are we going to right the civil wrong now? And now is always the best day to get it done.
Time's up. Thank you. The next speaker is Eric Baker, followed by Willie Moore, and then Gloria Gonzalez. Mr. Baker.
Good evening. I am a survivor. My father and mother moved here from Mississippi, and we had good days on the reservation and stuff until the city decided to take and push everybody out and burn their houses out and stuff. So we lost everything with that. And it don't make any sense that it's been almost 60-some years and we still haven't got people taken care of for all the dirt that was happening to us. It should be a change, and it's time for a change, and we shouldn't have to wait. My mother and father, they done passed on. He was a construction worker. He helped build everything around here. I was a construction worker. I'm a retired union man. We all worked here in this city and lived in this city, and we should be treated right by this city. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Willie Moore, followed by Gloria Gonzalez, and then Tamika Grizel.
Good evening, Council. My name is Eric Baker. I am not a survivor. I'm a supporter of Section 14. The reason why I wanted to speak is I wanted to ask the Council why Alameda County Reparations Commission wasn't hired to do the study. The California Reparations Task Force, why they weren't consulted. They have expertise. They are the same commission that the city of Oakland hired to do their reparations. There are 1,200 people in Oakland right now that are receiving reparations for the injustices that they faced. They weren't burned out of their homes. My question again to you is why hire somebody that has no expertise, nothing to do with Section 14, nothing to do with black people? I don't understand. Maybe you can ask yourself that same question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Gloria Gonzalez, followed by Tamika Grizel, and then Charles E. Metcalf Jr.
Hello again, Council. Thank you for these few minutes you've allowed us. I had a different speech, but you've heard all the speeches, you've heard all the stories, and all the eyewitnesses to the destruction of Section 14. These nice people are fading away. Every month we lose a member, maybe. Are you going to pass this situation to the next new council like your predecessors did? Please settle this situation. Come to agreement, a fair agreement. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tamika Griselle, followed by Charles E. Metcalf Jr., and then Reverend Dan Klein.
Good afternoon, City of Palm Springs. My name is Tamika Griselle. I've been here since 1977. I'm a descendant of Olin and Taretha Griselle, who left Mississippi to get away from Jim Crow. I sent Mr. DeHart here an email today, and I just expressed my strong support for the city to accept a proposal. He actually emailed me back, and I quote, "Can you help identify the atrocities so I can better understand your point?" So instead of me emailing you back, I came back in person because I wanted to tell you with my Cathedral City High School education that an atrocity is an extremely wicked and cruel act. And that kind of act happened in 1960s. The city of Palm Springs destroyed our families, community, burning down our homes and bulldozing belongings and memories to take away for the tourism. The tourism that I might add gave $7.4 billion in 2023, and I believe that was an increase of 4.5 from 2022. Okay? So since we got that now, we got the tourism, we got the money, let's get back to the people. Let's get back to Section 14 people. Like I said, my grandmother had about 10 kids and over 30-something grandkids. And I'm here. I'm a licensed nurse, pillar of society, never had a felony, never had a misdemeanor. And I'm a resident here. Okay? So I just want to say that we have built this place. Okay? And I just want to say that it's time for you guys to do what is right. I want to also just state here that there was a council member in an article who stated the Agua Caliente tribal member, Rowena Pendleton, fondly reminisces about Section 14. Living on Section 14 was probably some of the happiest days. I was safe and I was free. And that came from an Indian here. Okay? So you guys, please forgive our attitude, but Mr. Ron DeHart, you need to really put yourself into our shoes, sir. You've never been there, never. Just try it for 1 second. When you get home tonight, think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Charles E. Metcalf Jr., followed by Reverend Dan Klein, and then Michael Morrell.
As has already been stated, my name is Charles E. Metcalf Jr. I'm the son of Charles E. Metcalf Sr. and Jean Metcalf. My father served as a police officer here in the city for 17 years on the force. My mother, she worked at Walker Scott from the day it opened to the day it closed. They used to live on the reservation. And in 2021, the city of Palm Springs issued an apology for destroying their community and promised to do what they could to make things right with us. But 3 years later, the city has done nothing to make it right. This council has done nothing to honor their commitment to us. Instead, you have delayed and hidden behind excuses after excuse. Members of the council, Jeff, Grace, Christy, Lisa, and Ron, you've all said a lot that is on record. Let me remind you of some of your words. Ms. Hostage, you estimated that Section 14 families lost a total of $46 million in 2021, but offered us less than 10% of that in 2024 dollars. Ms. Middleton, you said that the city of Palm Springs was responsible for forcibly removing over 200 families from their homes. City of Palm Springs staff burned people's homes. City of Palm Springs staff drove bulldozers that tore down people's homes. But yet your offer only accounted for 145 families. Ms. Gardner, you and your father stood in my driveway while you were campaigning, asking me to support you. And I did. I voted for you. And then now you're part of this mess. Voting is coming back again. But let me remind you of your words. You said we have the right to right the wrongs of the past. That's why this apology is just one step. But the problem is, you never took step two. You got to put one foot in front of the other. I see you two been smiling the whole time. And that's pissing me off.
I'm sorry. Your time is up. Sorry.
Destroyed families. And to have the gall to sit here and laugh about it.
Mr. Metcalf?
How would any one of y'all feel if you went home tonight and y'all houses was bulldozed?
I'm sorry. Your time is up, Mr. Metcalf. Thank you.
That's the problem. You don't want to acknowledge that.
The next speaker is Reverend Dan Klein,
Yeah, no one is laughing. That's not okay.
followed by Micah Morrell, followed by Robert D. Giles.
Good evening, City Council. My name is the Reverend Dan Klein. I'm one of the priests at the Church of St. Paul in the Desert. And as you can hear, there's a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration at delays around rectifying some wrongs from the past. And my question for you all tonight is pretty simple. We've heard about strategic priorities of the city. We've heard about correcting processes to make our budgets more transparent. But the question I have for you is racial healing a priority of our city? Is racial healing a priority of our city? And the spiritual leader who I follow once said, where your treasure is where your heart is. All budgets are moral documents, and how we spend our money matters. How we handle it matters. And so when there's $700,000 that are allegedly misappropriated, that ain't a good look when you've got folks who are like, what about me? What about what had happened to us? That's not right. And we're talking about helping small nonprofits essential to our city, but we can't help the folks that built the city. The Human Rights Commission is a mess right now. We need to get our moral vision clear. We got to figure out how to get our process done, how to help move forward with racial healing, how to make sure our budget is being used to take care of folks that have taken care of us as a city, as a community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michael Morrell, followed by Robert D. Giles, and then Steve Walton.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Michael Morrell. I am a descendant from Ivory Morrell Sr., a proud community person of the city of Palm Springs. My father, as many of my cousins and all the other people I've spoke about, helped to build this city. I encourage you to go back 2 years and look at the Desert Sun and look up the name and obituary of Ivory Morrell Sr. He had a full page where he was talked about for what he did for this city. Yeah. Things that got you to where you are now, because I was born here. I was born here as a child, as a black child who was not allowed to be born in a hospital here. My parents had to drive to India. Once they did, then they brought me home. They instilled in me right from wrong, courage from cowardice. They told us that you do what's right by people and people will do what's right by you. My father's gone. September 11th was my mother's 100th birthday. I am here today because I came to celebrate my mother and her 100th birthday, and I just lost my sister who was 72 years old, who was born on Section 14. Yes. We only want what's right. Our parents left a system where they had to walk on the other side of the road if somebody white passed by them. So my father and my ancestors and my aunts and uncles packed their families up, came here for a better life. And if you think that we want something that's not ours, if you think we're not working for our best lives, you're wrong. You don't know us and you don't want to know us. Because as I said, I'm a gay man. So I know what the city was before everything changed. I see all the changes, and I'm really, really upset to say that people use diversity as a way to get what they want, but then they bypass those that don't look like them.
Your time is up.
And that's something that also happens in diversity too.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Accept everyone. And that's all we want you to do.
Okay.
Do what's right and have the courage to do what you
Thank you, sir. That's it. Next speaker is Robert D. Giles, followed by Steve Walton, and then Samantha Smith-Nix.
Hello, my name is Robert D. Giles. I'm a professor of ethnic studies, and I want to give you a little history lesson. So the history of the forced removal of black and brown residents, Mexican and black African American residents for Section 14, it is a part of a larger history of the disenfranchisement, the violent removal of indigenous Americans from this land that we sit on. This is land that belongs to Agua Caliente. I want to ask you guys a question. When history is written, because it seems like you are trying to rewrite the history again by not giving us the privilege of sitting on any type of a board that is going to do the research, because we have actually offered to do that so that the story will be told fairly. If you're rewriting history again, this time it's going to be a little bit harder, because I understand from researching Frank Bogart that he was a racist. And that he was someone who filled this forced removal. And I do understand that there's people in the city that want to valorize him and make him out to be a hero. And he was not that. And we're not going to let you rewrite the history anymore. The fact that we exist shows you that we are going to tell our stories, and we're not going to let you go back on your word. We're not going to go back ever. We're going to continue to record our family stories. I'm a descendant of Section 14, and I've heard some of you stand in support of us, and I'm really disappointed now that you guys are backing down. But we're not going anywhere, and the history is going to be recorded in truth and not in fiction. I still have time. My grandparents migrated here from East Texas. My grandmother cleaned Dr. Scholl's toilets. My grandfather helped to build this city. You guys know who helped to build this city. You guys know. Well, you can shut me off right now, but you're not going to shut us down.
The next speaker is Steve Walton, followed by Samantha Nix, followed by Mickey Brown Freeney.
I'm Steve Walton, and I want to show respect for the city council. All the years I grew up here, I'm a descendant. My mother's in the hospital right now, so I'm really sensitive, because, she's been a pillar of this community. She has been a patriot. She has loved Palm Springs. Our grandparents came from East Texas, and they built their home and everything. And you've heard all the destruction. I ain't gonna gotta go through a long, drawn-out thing, because I know that when you know the right thing, you do the right thing. And we're God-fearing people. We come from a community here. We were raised in the admonition and the fear of the Lord. We know that we can't, just disrespect people, you know what I'm saying? So we feeling a little disrespected right now, but I just say prayers that, the pillars in this community, the older people, I want to see them, benefit a little bit, see the labor, the grapes of their labor here in Palm Springs. And I just ask you to do the best, thing. In God we trust.
Thank you. The next speaker is Samantha Smith Nix, followed by Mickey Brown Freeney, followed by Dieter Crawford.
Hello, I'm just here to speak on behalf of my late grandfather, Noble Smith. My name is Samantha Smith Nix. I'm here to speak on behalf of my late grandfather, who was a resident on Section 14, Noble Smith. He migrated here from Texas. He migrated here, to get from the Jim Crow era. And, I'm thinking in my mind a lot of times, that must have been a horrible time for him, his 4 children, and his wife, my grandmother. He came here, my grandmother passed away, and he was a single father of 4 children. And I was just kind of thinking, instead of them going in and, burning people's houses down, it should have been, a meeting, for people to have a chance to be able to sell their property instead of, doing the harm and the evil that was done towards them. Because I don't know if anybody knows, back in the 1980s, in Indio, where they pretend like they wanted to expand the Indio Fashion Mall, which never happened. And of course, as you can see, the Palm Springs Mall is not here anymore either. And, but they were able to negotiate to sell, their houses, their land, their rent property, and stuff like that in Indio. But that was back in 1980s, of course. I was born in 1968. I graduated from Indio High School in 1987. So I am a descendant of, from Section 14. So, you know, it's a horrible thing that happened. You know, it's really bad. You know, I'm just thinking, you know, how in the world could a person could come in and burn men, women, children, babies, houses, properties, and then to leave them,
Thank you.
you know, displaced.
Thank you. Time is up, Ms. Nix. Thank you. The next speaker is Mickey Brown Freeney, followed by Dieter Crawford, and then Ariva Martin.
Hello, mayors and council members. I am a survivor. I was 5 years old. I got the most impact. My brother, my older sisters are here, still living, that remember it even more so, but they were grown and out of the home. I was left with the impact that still haunts me today mentally and physically when I saw my father be called a boy, where he couldn't even own a home when you displaced us of the north end of Palm Springs. That's not even on the map of Palm Springs, where they couldn't even get a car. They had to get co-signed. It was a Caucasian woman that today she said I was going to be something. I didn't sign up for this, but I'm the one that gave the Holy Grail. And I am part of Section 14 to make you state that you acknowledge what you did. Not you per se, but your peoples that's no longer here, of your color and your kind. What I'm saying to you, I know your strategy and your get down. I've been fighting you guys for years, and I am 64 years old. Thank God be the glory that I'm here to look at you now, that you're in the seat to reverse and make amends with the other ones that's no longer here to do. I'm proud of you, Lisa Mentel, because you did a transformation in your life and is now accepted in the world that once about a time that was not accepted. I bow to you and take my hat off to you that you stood up and took the courage to do what you did. Give us the same chance to do our transformation. Give us the chance to have something here in Palm Springs that our ancestors worked hard for and left for us, that they're not even being acknowledged, that they built this town of Palm Springs with their sweat tears, that they became alcoholics and the family is so dysfunctional. That's what you're getting over there on the north end of Palm Springs that's not on the map for dysfunction because of the impact that Section 14 did to us. And you continue to do this. Please reconsider the proposal that we
Thank you, Ms. Freeney. Thank you. The next speaker is Dieter Crawford, followed by Ariva Martin, and then Stephanie Brown.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Dieter Crawford. My family came to Palm Springs in the late 1940s and settled on Section 14 of the Agua Caliente Indian Reservation. Like many of these fine people that you've heard from tonight, you guys regularly hear from me, been advocating for reparations now for a few years, or some type of restitution for our homes that were destroyed on Section 14. But tonight, there's more than just me. As you guys can hear, you've kind of made the elders angry. So, you know, I had a speech prepared, but they've said everything that I wanted to say, and they said it with conviction. So I just want to encourage you guys to take a good look at the offer that we've put on the table. I know you guys put out a counter offer, but it's really a low ball offer. We know the homes were worth a lot more than you guys valued them at, and we also know that more homes were destroyed than was documented. As has been said, our families were the blood, sweat, and tears and the backbone of the service industry many years ago, as we still are today. Many of our families helped to build the mid-century modern architecture that Palm Springs is so famous for today. And we just want to make sure that you know, those memories, you know, and that work that they put in is not forgotten and not erased. We lost a chance at creating generational wealth, so we just want to have a fair shot at being compensated for the property that we lost and the homes that were destroyed. We've been kicking the can down the road long enough. As people mentioned here earlier, we're losing our elders. we're losing people every day. So I just want to encourage you guys to do something. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker is Reva Martin, followed by Stephanie Brown, and then Bart Davis.
Good evening, council members. My name is Reva Martin, and I am incredibly proud to stand here as the attorney for the men and women of Section 14. Their grace, their composure, their courage to continue to fight for restitution, to fight for justice, is something that's remarkable, something that should be really followed, modeled by people around this state. I am so incredibly disappointed with your city attorney, with your city manager. We spent hours, we spent days, we spent weeks, we spent months negotiating with them in good faith. We were told that they were going to negotiate with us in good faith. That didn't happen. We were promised that the counteroffer presented to the city council would be on the calendar today, after being told in the summer that the city would not consider it because it was too big of a decision to make during the summer months. So we're down here 250 strong last night on the steps of city councils, steps of city hall. We're here today en masse to say to the city that we are not alone. There are dozens and dozens of national leaders, from our great Senator LaFonza Butler to other elected officials, to the Black Caucus of the state of California, to leaders at the HRC, Equality California, the former mayor of Los Angeles, the County Board of Supervisors. People across this country are watching what's happening in Palm Springs. Look at the article in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the BBC, the AP. Yes. We will be back on TV with ABC in October. We're going to be in these streets. We're going to be downtown Palm Springs. We're going to be in the halls of Sacramento. We're going to be in the halls of the U.S. Congress, because this is a fight that deserves to be won by these families. You guys continue to delay, you continue to delay, you continue to make excuse after excuse rather than doing the right thing. You know the right thing to do, and if you won't do it voluntarily, you will do it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Stephanie Brown, followed by Bart Davis, and then Cheryl Taylor. Yes, sorry, there's noise there. Stephanie Brown, followed by Bart Davis, and Cheryl Taylor, and then, oops.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Stephanie Brown. My mother is a survivor of Section 14. She was born on Section 14, the Native American reservation here in Palm Springs. She lived on the reservation with her parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins. They all contribute greatly to the economic success of Palm Springs through various occupations, including construction and other avenues of bringing our economy up in Palm Springs. And they still do to this day, my mom and my family. That's right. However, she, along with my grandparents, family members, and other survivors, witnessed and experienced the horrific events of what happened on Section 14, including having to leave her home and community on Section 14 because of the destruction of homes, the breaking of the community, with fires set by the city upon the survivors and residents of Section 14, members of the community of Palm Springs, upon its residents, causing her and other survivors to leave for safety. My family and the survivors of Section 14 are asking the city council members of the city of Palm Springs to please make right your promises to correct the wrong that our city have done to its citizens, residents, the survivors of Section 14, and their descendants. Thank you. And many of the homes that are built here in this community, in Palm Springs and across the Coachella Valley, my grandpa, Willie Moore, had a great dealing of making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time is up. The next speaker is Bart Davis, followed by Cheryl Taylor, and then Mike Kaiser.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Taylor. I am a descendant Section 14. My father, Samuel Armstrong, worked hard in this city. He helped build this city. And like it's just awful that you guys sit here and stall and stall and stall, and you laugh in our faces, okay? And it's not right. Not right at all. Because you got to remember, you got to give account for everything you do. God sees everything, and you get away with nothing. Nothing. God said, vengeance is mine, and I shall repay. It's better, the word says it's better to not make a vow than to lie. And I find you guys to be a liar. You don't like it, but you lied. We should have been, just like you did on that board, yes, yes, yes. So that's what it should have been tonight for Section 14. Our people, black and brown, worked on Section 14. We worked in this city. We worked in the hospitals, the churches, the school. Emptied your trash. Clean your houses. Toilets, everything. We did it all. Okay? Like if you don't do it right, like you said, we're going downtown. We're coming full force. And ain't no bullshit to the Messiah. Ain't nothing you can do about it. I mean business tonight. The Lord said in his word, take it by force. And if we got to take it by force, that's just what we're going to do. So I advise y'all to get it together and say yes, 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 just like you did last night.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bart Davis, followed by Cheryl Taylor.
Thank you, council members, for the opportunity for me to express my concerns over the new navigation center. Okay? I was told by the staff over at the Access Center that Martha's Kitchen was going to take over and no other charity was going to be allowed in. If that happens, that would be a shame. Now, Martha's Kitchen has the distinction among the homeless people, which I am one, of being the most hated charity out there. Many people have said that if Martha's Kitchen has anything to do with this, they will not go, which will be another fail for homelessness by Palm Springs. Now, the reason they're hated so much is because their operation model is prison. When you go to Martha's Kitchen and they take you to that new navigation center, you, first off, are searched physically and your stuff. They take you in there. You have to stand in line. Then they will let you have one break for a cigarette, and then you have to go to bed, okay? Then they wake you up at 4, and then they start the whole process over again. That is not the kind of navigation center that's going to work for anybody who has any self-respect. So, I can tell you hundreds of different stories about different ways that they have violated people's rights, treated them wrong, basically kept them on from getting housing and being homeless
Thank you.
longer
Time
than
is
is
up.
necessary.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. The next speaker is Cheryl Taylor, followed by Mike Kaiser. Cheryl Taylor? Cheryl Taylor, you're up. Oh, you did? Okay. Sorry. I got there. And these are from 2B. I'm not sure if they're still here. Mike Kaiser or Chris Thompson or Aaron Leader, Marvin Roos, Greg Thomas. The next speaker is Michael Joseph Pitkin, followed by Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero, and then Abraham Ishak.
Michael Joseph Pitkin for J and L. Hate, discrimination is not strictly coming from white skin. It also comes from multiple areas, including religions, governments, social movements, and those in positions of authority. Reverse discrimination, intimidation, and retribution can come from brown, black, red, yellow, and all colors of the rainbow skin. My Palm Springs Library Internet has been hacked by the Palm Springs Library Board members' Internet Explorer, aided by State of California and County Second Chance programs, Allied Universal Security Services. Reverse discrimination is when Allied Universal Security Services employees sit in their trucks in front of the sinks at the locked bathrooms in Sunrise Park. Why are the bathrooms locked anyways, forcing everyone using the park into the inadequate library bathrooms? Establishments Clause, First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Free Exercise Clause prohibits the government from interfering with a person's practice of their religion. First, Fifth, and 14th Amendments. Article 20 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights provides relief from wrongs when government feels its interests outweigh the interference, engaging in and promoting illegal activities. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brandeis, I feel I have the right to privacy and the right to be left alone, even unhoused, in my own unhoused surroundings. Fruit of the poisonous tree.
Thank you. The next speaker is Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero, followed by Abraham Ishak, and then David Weiner. Dr. Jesse Niemeyer Romero, followed by Abraham Ishak, and then David Weiner. Sorry.
Okay. Before I go into my statement, I invite all of you to grab a copy of the resolution I am speaking of, wherein the city took a stance on foreign policy last year. Since December, I and other community members have come before this council to request your reconsideration of the resolution you passed without proper agendization and without any real input from this community. As we approach the one-year anniversary of the events that led up to that resolution, though some of you feel as if it's old business, the issues that you put the city on record about is still current, and they are dealing with the effects of those issues every day. The majority, if not all of you, are hoping that I and other community members will simply just run out of steam on our request to have this council review that resolution. However, I will tell you right now that we will be here attending every council meeting, even those held after the November election, asking that this city make right its position and take a good hard look at their role and jurisdiction. Also, just a note, Councilmember DeHart, do you really not know the definition of atrocity? If not, no wonder you can't find the conviction to take some action on this resolution, let alone Section 14. And Councilmember Holstedge, you are always up there smirking, so I'm so glad that someone else noticed it too.
Thank you. The next speaker is Abraham Ishak, followed by David Weiner.
I listened to a political science and international relations scholar speak who emphasized that U.S. policy towards Israel will remain unchanged, despite what anyone in leadership, including Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, might say. Public sentiment, however, has shifted significantly. There is now an obvious disconnect between public opinion and the stance of political elites. That was evident at the recent Democratic National Convention, where pro-Israeli speakers were given a platform, but those who were too liberal or pro-Palestinian were denied the opportunity to speak. While pro-Palestinian voices were present inside the convention, they were largely silenced, and protests from pro-Palestinian groups took place outside the convention. This mirrors how this council is handling the issue. You are acting as the elites, unwilling to take a stand on what is right and what is humane. The tragedy of October 7th was devastating, but so were the Nakba, decades of military operations in the West Bank and Gaza, the apartheid system in place, the annexation of land, and other humanitarian violations. Supporting Israel after October 7th without acknowledging these realities is not justified. I have presented each of you with options for addressing this resolution: to rescind it entirely, to rescind and release a new resolution, or to amend the current resolution. I hope you have taken the time to review these options and will include them in the agenda for the next meeting. Show the community that you are not disconnected from public sentiment, and that you too are willing to engage with the humanitarian realities at stake. Show the community that you stand up against apartheid in all its forms. I once said in a previous speech of mine, I was speaking to the survivors of Section 14 and their legal counsel. I urge you to stand firm, as you are, and demand higher settlements from the city. The same governing body, including the city manager and the entire city council, that shamelessly dismisses human rights violations cannot be trusted to uphold justice and dignity. Your fight for justice is our fight, and we will stand with you every step of the way.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Weiner. David? David? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start by saying I didn't intend this to be a political statement. I just grabbed a shirt as I was walking out the door. But greeting Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, and city staff, manager, attorney, everyone in this room. I, like all of us, have been listening to these stories and the frustration and the anguish, and my heart hurts again. As you all know, I've been standing with this community for years now, and I will continue to do so. These folks have welcomed me, and they have shared their stories with me, just as they have shared their stories with everyone here. Palm Springs is home to all of us. Some of us have been here for a few years, some for their whole lives, in my case, since 2004. We know what happened in the 50s and 60s. We've already acknowledged the harm it has done, and as a community, we began the process of sitting down to figure out how to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and healing. This is about doing the right thing, making the world a little better than it was before. In our tradition, we call it tikkun olam. The residents of our city and their descendants are hurting. The situation has drawn national attention, and there have been so many articles written, most recently last week in the Washington Post. It deserves our attention as well. It deserves our attention now. Kicking the can down the road or postponing a resolution by commissioning another study doesn't help them, and it doesn't help any of us. I ask you, as a resident and a 20-year member of this community, to go back to the table, authorize the city staff, the city attorney, and the city manager to get something done. Not next year, not after the election, but today. Let's start today. Folks are hurting. Some are literally dying, waiting for us to figure this out. We can do better. Please do better, and let's do better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Clerk, is there any other public comment?
No further comments.
Okay, the next item is City Council and City Manager requests and upcoming agenda development. City Manager?
No comments, Mr. Mayor, other than I just wanted to update the council on the status of the Navigation Center construction. We're moving full speed ahead. We hope to be able to turn the keys over to the operators by the end of this month. So
I'm going to ask you just to keep it down, please, while we hear the City Manager. I think now it's good. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, a couple things. One is I wanted to give the council a quick update on the Navigation Center. We're getting ready to open that at the end of this month, and we'll be planning an opening ceremony to welcome guests into the facility. And council members will be certainly getting that on your schedule and planning that event, working very diligently to get that. I did want to just also reiterate the mayor's comments earlier in the evening in case anybody missed it, but We do have, through mutual aid, one of our firefighting companies working up on the line fire, providing services up there. And so we are working through that as well. I did want to just, let's see. Yeah, I did want to just mention for our tentative upcoming meeting schedule, you'll see over the next 3 council meetings, we are looking at, you've asked us to come back and with some updated policies and ordinances with our cannabis special events, as well as turf conversion recommendations for City Hall outside the building. So we'll be talking about that at the next meeting. On October 10th, we have a historic designation ordinance to consider, as well as some procedures that we want to share with council about undergrounding utilities. And we've had questions about that from neighborhoods that would love to figure out how to underground their utilities, and we'll be bringing that forward. And then on October 24th, again, another historic designation. We are working on an ordinance for small cell wireless facilities that we want to have the council consider. And of course, there'll be a number of consent items along the way here, but these are the things that we know that we're working on. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Holstich?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few months ago, we accepted the opioid settlement agreement, and we accepted the funds, and then we gave direction to staff to speak to Palm Springs PD and the fire department about using those funds. And so my understanding is that that will come back for allocation to city council so that we can use those funds and deploy them in the community. I know this is an urgent issue, so I'd very much like to see that come back if possible, because I'd like that program to be moving forward. Do you have an update about that, or will that be on an upcoming agenda? I see Deputy City Manager Flynn Fagg has turned on his mic, and I've learned to always listen when he does that. Thank you. You can't see each other.
Yes, we've had a work group who's been working on that since we brought the item to City Council. We do have a couple of recommendations for the City Council to consider, and we'll be happy to bring that forward to City Council very quickly.
Thank you. You'll think it come in the next few meetings?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Council member comments? Councilmember Middleton?
It's not a comment on the agenda. I want to acknowledge passing of someone as we get close to the end of the
Okay, I said at the end. Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to acknowledge, have a comment? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Not an agenda item, but I just would like to acknowledge Ariel Tolfree, who is our Housing Services Administrator. She is being honored with the Community Investment Award coming up here soon. And those awards go to leaders who strive for a more equitable Coachella Valley and are dedicated to improving the lives of workers and families everywhere. So very excited that Ariel is being recognized with that award, and we thank her for her service with the city.
Okay, anybody else? I do have an agenda item proposal, but I'm going to ask the Mayor Pro Tem to recuse himself at this point. Nothing bad. So we, just before break, we received a request from the Pride organization for an adjustment to their funding. We've also received some requests from Arenas on LGBT promotion. I am proposing that we have a future agenda item that looks at LGBT tourism as an economic development item and have it as a future discussion item related to that and to what we can do with the Arenas district, as we want to establish Palm Springs as an LGBT tourist destination, and what we can do potentially this year, but more importantly on a long term going forward as a separate initiative. Yes? Do we have support as I bring that to the agenda? Okay. We have 3 to At least 3 votes, so we'll bring that back. Any other agenda items or discussion? Okay, Councilmember Middleton, you wanted to close the meeting?
Thank you. Today we had a celebration of life for Donald Beck, who was a resident of my neighborhood, Tockwitz River Estates. Donald passed just a little bit earlier this year. He was 92 years old. Over the course of his life here in Palm Springs, Donald was responsible for being one of the founding members of the Desert AIDS Project. He was also one of the founding members of my neighborhood. He was extremely active in working with Alzheimer's patients, with Parkinson's patients, and just simply was a wonderful human being to be with at any time, unless you were driving in front of him, because he would drive so fast that he, in his wonderful Jaguar convertible, that he would almost be in your back seat. So we miss Donald. He had a beautiful life here with his husband, Jeffrey, and like so many people in Palm Springs, one of our pioneers.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The next regular city council meeting will be held on Thursday, September 26, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. And this meeting is now adjourned at 7:58 p.m.